Hi, welcome back to Biz Jet TV. It's Fab Poli here today with you, and I would like to tell you all about today's video. We're going to be talking to Robert DeLaurentis from San Diego. He's an entrepreneur and pilot, also an author of two interesting books, one called Flying Through Life and the other one Zen Pilot. In this interview, you'll learn about Robert. He started his career in the US Navy as a young boy. He always wanted to fly. After his career in the Navy, he started to build a real estate portfolio, got his way up to a certain point. He studied spiritual psychology. The principles that he learned in spiritual psychology allowed him to triple his real estate business and put him into position to buy his own airplane. Robert went out and bought himself a Piper Malibu, single-engine airplane, and decided to take that airplane around the world. So he flew around the world, around the equator. And during that flight, he had a problem where the engine failed. So he'll be sharing that experience and what happened and how he dealt with that emergency. And then we will be talking about his next expedition. He's about to launch out in a Turbo Commander, which has been modified. And this Turbo Commander is going to be flying from the South Pole to the North Pole. So before he went round this way around the world, this time he's going to go round this way. So those of you flat earthers out there, well, you'll actually be hearing from somebody that's actually telling you I've been around the world once and I'm about to do it a second time and the earth is not flat. But anyway, apart from that, Robert's an interesting character, interesting mission here. Also, this flight that he's about to go out on, he's going to be telling us about that. The 90 sponsors sponsored this, his foundation, and how he's going to be raising money for young people on this trip. So very, very interesting insight. But before we get into the interview, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to Biz Jet TV, give us a thumbs up at the end of the video, and please comment below. So let's go over to San Diego and talk to Robert DeLaurentis. Off we go. Hi Robert, how are you doing today? So you're here connecting with me here today from sunny California. Nice to have you on Biz Jet TV. Robert, let's get straight into things here. So, how did you get into flying? How did you start flying? And tell me a bit about your story.
You know, I started. Well, I had an interest as a child in flying, and I built model planes. I built string control planes. I actually would build radio controlled planes, and then as an adult, I finally had the resources of time and money to start flying. So I started at the late age of 47. Okay. And you know, had I had some resources, I think I would have started much earlier.
Yeah. So your business is real estate, and you were saying to me before we started the interview that your real estate portfolio is concentrated in a 5-mile radius. So you don't really need the airplane to travel, but your business has allowed you to acquire the airplane, which is something you've always wanted to do. And then you've launched out doing these interesting adventures around the world in the airplane. And you did complete one a couple of years ago, and you're about to launch into a new one. So tell us a bit about the one you did when you visited in 2015. You were flying a Piper Malibu Mirage around the world, and you had a little incident that happened, which I thought was interesting, and not just because it happened, but how you dealt with it. I thought that was very professional and very clever the way you did it. So tell us a bit about what the purpose was of going around the world, 23 countries in 98 days. Tell us what the scope of that mission was and how it went. Over to you, Robert.
Okay, so I had gone back to graduate school and I got an advanced graduate degree in spiritual psychology, and I started to use those concepts in my business. And there were 19 in total, and those were the topic of my first book, Flying Through Life. Mm-hmm. And when I incorporated those in business, I found that my business tripled in size. So I went from about 100 rental units to 300 in the span of about 5 years using those concepts. Mm-hmm. So rather than just talking about them, I wanted to show the world that they worked. And that's where the plane came in. I decided I would do this trip around the world along the equator to showcase the concepts. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the Malibu was a very capable plane, but subject to the need for maintenance, of course, right? Yeah. And I had a oil drain line that failed after some maintenance, and we didn't catch it on run-up. So I took off. I was 14,000 feet over the Strait of Malacca, climbing on a beautiful, clear day. And then all of a sudden I had the oil pressure light flicker, and I had never seen it flicker before. It was always one of those lights that never went on. Mm-hmm. And before I could even say, oh God, mm-hmm. The light was solid, the prop overspun, and it was like I hit my seatbelts. Uh-huh. And as I hit him, I looked over to the right side and I could see there was nobody with me. And I thought, oh my God, I'm alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like this is on me.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have a moment of panic and, you know, all the fears start going through your mind. It's a very primal moment, I think. And then my training kicked in and I thought, you know what, direct to nearest airport, and Kuala Lumpur came up. International at 19.6 nautical miles. I turned the plane to the left and, you know, was talking with the air traffic controller. He said, you know, what are you doing? I said, I'm declaring an emergency. I need vectors to the nearest airport. Mm-hmm. And he gave me vectors back to the airport I left from, and I knew I didn't have enough altitude for that. Mm-hmm. And I was doing calculations in my mind, you know, how far can I glide? Mm-hmm. But I certainly didn't have the correct numbers for a prop that was flat.
Yeah.
Because I could feather it at that point. And made the turn, you know, started the descent, was trying to set up the ideal descent rate, and trying to get more oil into the engine. And I had a supplemental oil system installed in the plane, but that was a complicated process because, you know, you've got to open the can, you've got to put a tube in, you've got to open the valve, you've got to turn on the pump. And, you know, the pump was somewhere behind me in a plastic bag. Mm-hmm. So eventually I got that on, you know, a quart of oil went in, still nothing. Another quart went in. And then I had one more quart. I put that in. I got a slight flicker on the oil pressure gauge, but you know, I ended up coasting directly into Kuala Lumpur International too, which is where a lot of the 737s were. And the air traffic controller, you know, kept coming back, giving me different vectors, and I knew the only route was direct. So I finally said, final communication, direct Kuala Lumpur, and then I went in, you know, with smoke, you know, coming off the engine because the oil was spraying on the 1500 degree exhaust. And I was overloaded with 600 pounds of extra avgas in the cabin with me.
Yeah.
And too heavy to land.
Yeah.
Because I was over max gross. So, yeah, it was an interesting moment landing the plane heavy with the smoke and, you know, no power.
So when there was no damage to the airplane then once you landed?
Well, you know, it's funny because there's 4 possible outcomes. There's the plane's destroyed, you're killed. The next one is the plane's damaged. And you're injured. The other one is, you know, you land the plane and you're okay, you can walk away. So anyway, there's a combination of things that can happen, and luckily I walked away unscathed. The engine was questionable because we had run it without oil at that point.
Yeah.
And that's really where Zen pilot, flight of passion, and the journey starts, you know, with the engine out.
Yeah. So what happened? You did some maintenance on the airplane, and then off you went. You continued your trek around the world.
I wish it was that easy. Luckily, you know, I was within driving distance of the original mechanics. They came out and pulled the cover off, and within 3 or 4 seconds, the lead mechanic, you know, saw the issue. He pointed to it. Mm-hmm. I thought, wow, that's really interesting. You could find it that fast. But they did a sort of field repair right there. Yeah. And I was able to fly it back to their hangar a couple days later. It was still leaking oil a little bit, but enough to get it back there. And then we did a series of repairs on it, one of which included epoxying the head on the engine because there was a slight crack. Uh-huh. And luckily that helped. So, you know, then to start the trip over the Pacific, but I had run the engine without oil for a time. Yeah. So, you know, how much faith can you really have in your engine at that point?
Yeah.
That was the unnerving part.
So how did the trip back to the US go then? Was it uneventful? Was it okay?
There were several events, and I'd probably refer you to the book because there's, you know, great detail there. Yeah. But, yeah, I never really had faith in the engine at that point. And there was certain things it was doing that, you know, were terrifying. But if you compare the other option of shipping an engine, you know, across the world, trying to find a mechanic to install it, mm-hmm. Introducing a new engine to a plane also has many issues too. Oh, and we decided to go with the devil that we knew rather than the devil that we didn't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, many challenges going back. That's really
what
the
routing,
topic of Zen. What is that flight?
Yeah, what routing did you fly back from Malaysia to the US?
Well, I went through Australia, over to New Caledonia, to Christmas Island, to Honolulu, and then back to Monterey.
Ah, okay. Wow. That must have taken you a while. Good. Now, tell us about the next event you're about to launch on, because you went round the equator, and now you're going to fly from the North Pole to the South Pole. Is that correct?
I'm going from the South Pole to the North Pole.
Okay, yeah.
And starting in San Diego and heading south down through Central and South America, to the tip of Chile, Punta Arenas, directly to the pole and back, then over to Natal, Brazil.
So you're going to land? Are you going to land at one of the airfields in Antarctica?
No, I'm going to possibly at King George Island. Okay. We're looking at two separate flights. The problem is if you land at King George, they have a relatively short runway, and I'll have a lot of extra fuel, 985 gallons.
Yeah.
So the plane would never take off in that short distance.
Yeah.
So I'll go from Punta Arenas directly to the pole, and then on the way back, if I need to stop at King George Island, I have that as an alternate. But then I'll go back to Punta Arenas. Then we'll do more of a sort of symbolic flight the following day or a couple of days later from that same airport to King George Island on Antarctica and then back. And that requires that you have somebody from one of the local aviation authorities fly with you.
Yeah, because this time, you're also flying a different airplane this time, aren't you? You're not flying the Piper Malibu, which had one engine. This time you're flying a twin-engine airplane. Can you tell our viewers a bit about the change of airplane? I guess the one engine scare brought you into at least I've got two engines. If one packs up, I've got the other one running.
Yeah, that's a good point. After that engine failure, I decided it was time to shift to turbines because they're, I'm told, 100% more reliable. And then we have two turbine engines, and it turns out that they're newly refurbished Honeywell TPE 331-10Ts, which are the same engines you'll find on Predator drones.
Yeah.
So we're trying to go for the most reliable engines we can find.
Okay.
That's one engine out was enough for me.
Yeah. So you're going to fly this Turbo Commander then from the South Pole. What route are you going to do when you're coming up north then from the South Pole?
It'll be, again, through Punta Arenas over to Natal, Brazil, which is the eastern part of Brazil.
Yep.
And then probably over to Namibia. We were going to go further north, but it's a little bit lawless, the further north in Africa you get.
Yeah.
And then my way across southern Africa, over to Madagascar, maybe to the Maldives.
Yeah.
And then back over to Kenya, Ethiopia, and then up through Europe, and then over the top, Spitsbergen. And then for the North Pole, it's going to be the magnetic North Pole, the true North Pole, and the North Pole of inaccessibility, and then into Prudhoe Bay in Alaska. And then, sort of zigzag down through Alaska and back to California.
Oh, wow. That's good. And you've raised money to do this. You've got a number of sponsors, and you've got a bit of a message and a NASA experiment on board. Tell our viewers a bit about this aspect of this mission.
Yeah, we have 90 sponsors, amazingly generous people who have faith in me, have faith in the trip. And, it really takes a solid foundation like that to go out into the world and take chances, to take the plane to its limits. And we're so fortunate to have them. We have some of what I call angels, and they're individual people that are just inspired by the trip that have contributed, which helps. We're still looking for a fuel sponsor. Okay. Preferably biofuels, and I'll be at NBAA talking to some people, hopefully making that happen.
Yeah.
And we're also looking for hotels and ground transportation. Otherwise, we're pretty well covered in terms of things like tires and batteries and props and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then the second part of your question, I'm sorry?
Yeah, so what's the purpose? You got the NASA experiment on board as well, and tell us a bit about the message that you want to send out there with this trip from North Pole to South Pole to North Pole.
Okay. So after the first trip, we had a successful flight. The city recognized the plane, declared a Spirit of San Diego Day. They did a proclamation. We had over 100 television interviews, radio, magazine, newspaper, and then recognized on Wikipedia and a lot of other places. But we wanted to do it, one bigger. And we had some experience, and we realized that the plane was really a global billboard. And one day I was doing some research on the internet on the North and South Poles, and I found out that those are the only two places on the planet where peace has always existed. So I thought, how cool, to symbolically connect the poles and everybody in between on this mission of world peace.
Yeah.
And, on top of that, we're carrying a NASA experiment. It's proof of concept for a wafer-scale spaceship. UC Santa Barbara is the group of scientists that are funded by NASA for this.
Yeah.
And it's literally about the size of your hand. And the idea is that in the future, instead of sending fuel, thousands and thousands of gallons of rocket fuel, rocket motors, and astronauts into space, it makes sense just to blast these miniature spaceships out into outer space using a railgun or an electromagnetic cannon.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, it uses the same amount of energy, but it's ground-based, so you don't have to, put that whole structure out into orbit. The wafer-scale spaceship will later be carried by the Amazon Blue Origin rocket, and then NASA is proposing, I think, in 2059 to launch them. But they basically gather information. So it'll be taking some very low-resolution pictures, recording the altitude, the speed, temperatures, that sort of thing. But, above and beyond those two missions, we have other missions associated with the flight. One of them is STEM education for kids, and we intend to use the plane as a mobile STEM lab after the trip at different museums, airports, and events. And Redbird has agreed to do 5 flight simulations of the trip. So we'll have a Redbird flight simulator. Yeah. The kids will be able to come and touch the plane, that made history. They'll get inside the cockpit and see a panel that rivals their best home computer game. So the idea is really to inspire a generation of future pilots and anybody who's going after, what they perceive as a possibly big dream. Because that's how we see this. That was what we talked about in the first book, Flying Through Life. And then, Zen Pilot, Flight of Passion, and The Journey Within is really a continuation of that. And then we'll have a third book called Citizen of the World, which is the name of the plane. Yeah. Citizen of the World to the ends of the earth and beyond. So it all sort of fits nicely together. We're basically trying to do bigger and better and get our message, out into the world.
So are you going to be doing some form of social media following thing of your trip, where you're going to be meeting people at different airports where you land at? I mean, how is that part of the mission being organized?
Well, we're definitely on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, everywhere we can be at this time, really. We have a great website, which is www.pole2poleflight.com, and the 2 is 3-0.
Yeah.
And then I'll be stopping in various locations for the United Nations associations, for the Explorers Club, hopefully for some AOPA affiliates, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. And, periodically I'm contacted by people that want me to come and do a presentation for them somewhere along the route.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to do that because we have a 6-month time frame for the trip, because it takes 6 months, for the temperatures to change at the poles. Yeah. And we hope to cross the poles at the warmest point. Okay. So I've got 6 months on the road, basically.
Oh, wow. So, and it's just you on the airplane. You don't have anybody else with you, apart from that trip, part of that trip where you have to have some local civil aviation authority person on board.
I'll have a few people at different phases. Eric Lindbergh, the grandson of Charles Lindbergh, hopefully will be flying with me back into San Diego. Okay. We have some of the major sponsors that will ride along on certain legs. The Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association is sending their VP of Marketing in Brazil.
Yeah.
So, we have some good people, all of them pilots, because the plane will be in ferry configuration.
Yeah.
And you can have a licensed pilot with you.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I'll have people along probably for about 10 to 15% of the trip.
Oh, okay. That's good. Okay. So people will be able to follow you on social media then as you trek around the world again from pole to pole. I bet you that the people that think the Earth is flat are not going to be too happy about this because you'll be proving to them that it's not flat. But yeah, very interesting what you're doing. Is there a charity element attached to this? Because obviously you're saying from peace, the only 2 places on Earth where there's always been peace. This is a great message for the world.
Yes, it is a great message for the world. We call it our one planet, one people, one plane mission.
Yeah.
And it's actually supported by my foundation, which is called the DeLaurentis Foundation.
Okay.
.org.
Yeah.
And we have different products, that we sell in support of the trip. But that foundation will be providing scholarships for kids to learn how to fly after the trip.
Oh, okay.
So the immense cost of the trip is now being covered by the foundation, but after that, it's going to be focusing on kids.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Robert, thank you very much for being on the show. Is there a final message you would like to send out there to our viewers before we close?
Just, that the planet is already heading in this direction of oneness. We have communications that are global via satellite, via internet. Our economies are becoming very global with products from all over the world. The issues that we have, pollution and plastic islands and nuclear proliferation are things that are, again, global. And people are even starting to look more and more alike because, the races are starting to breed. And it's natural that we evolve into this place of oneness. And that's what our trip's really about, connecting everyone on the planet in oneness.
Yeah, uniting everybody. Okay, thank you very much then. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Robert DeLaurentis. A great, interesting story there. And we'll be covering Robert's trip from the South Pole to the North Pole in the next few episodes as soon as he launches out there. We'll be connecting to him about once or twice. I also encourage you to read his books, both Zen Pilot and Flying Through Life. Great read, both of them. Very interesting. So if you haven't subscribed to Biz Jet TV, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. Comment below, let us know what you thought about this episode. Give us a thumbs up. And that's all from Fab Poli at Biz Jet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.